Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday to you and yours. Hope you had an awesome weekend. We have a great show planned for you today and all week. We're going to get you rocking and rolling here very quickly. Steve Kim, Shemeka Michelle will be here with us today. We'll start with my fire starter about my dear friend, Jim Brown. Jim Brown never sold out. That's his legacy. He couldn't be bought or compromised. He epitomized the kind of masculinity America now rejects as toxic. Brown, 87, died on Friday. People will struggle to accurately define him. He's far more than the greatest running back to ever play professional football. He was not a civil rights activist. Attempts to paint him as a serial domestic abuser with unproven allegations come across as a smear to taint his reputation and impact. No sellout. Those two words make Jim Brown unique and the most important athlete of the last 65 years. Brown evolved without changing. He stood on a set of principles and values regardless of consequence. His peers did not. Muhammad Ali, he changed. He disavowed the Nation of Islam, never apologized for racially denigrating Joe Frazier, and became the darling of white liberal America. Bill Russell chose the same path as Ali, the adulation of liberal America over truth. Russell dumped his first wife and college sweetheart, Rose Swisher, for Miss USA 1968, Dorothy Anstead. He then married two more times before his death. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is arguably one of the worst sellouts in sports history. He skipped the 1968 Olympics to protest U.S. governmental policies. He is now an unofficial spokesman for the experimental medical vaccines supplied by our government and virtually anything else the Democratic Party tells him to endorse. For 87 years, Jim Brown could not be controlled. He thought for himself and did what he believed. When Russell was releasing pictures of himself on a knee in support of Colin Kaepernick, Jim Brown was telling Kaepernick to choose between activism and football. Quote, and this is directly from Jim Brown, "I'm going to give you the real deal. I'm an American. I don't desecrate my flag and my national anthem. I'm not going to do anything against the flag and the national anthem. If you have a cause, I think you should organize it, present it in a manner where it's not only you standing or sitting on one knee, but a lot of people can get behind it and do something about it." Jim Brown quit football at age 29 to pursue acting opportunities in Hollywood. In 1988, he launched the America I Can program, a life skills teaching organization that mentored gang members. Brown never believed in pointless gestures and symbolism. He believed in organization and programs. America I Can developed a curriculum specific for developing men into productive citizens. Brown was uninterested in creating awareness. He was about creating solutions. I first met Jim in the early 1990s. He spoke at Indiana University. I attended the event as a sports writer for the Bloomington Herald-Times. Brown abrasively blew me off as I followed him down a hallway, pestering him with questions. His gruff demeanor reminded me of my father. I told him he couldn't offend me or scare me off because I was Jimmy Whitlock's son, and he reminded me of my dad. That caught Brown's attention. As my profile escalated as a sports writer, Brown began returning my phone calls. I eventually visited him in Los Angeles and learn more about America I Can and the guys who work with the football legend. Rockhead Johnson, Julian Mendoza, and Bobby Glanton. In 2008, I wrote a long profile story for Playboy magazine on Brown's organization. Brown backed his commitment to slowing gang violence in Los Angeles with an organization dedicated to do just that and opening his home to men that the rest of America feared. Jim's peers chased checks and adulation. Jim worked. He spent his own money. He took real risks to achieve his cause. Jim was authentic in a way most athletes are not. Modern pro athletes worship the bag. They all have a price. They want to be billionaires. They bought the lie that the black community suffers from a financial crisis, not a spiritual crisis. I never remember discussing religion with Jim. I do not know his religious beliefs. What I know is that Jim believed in purpose. He lived a purpose-driven life. His purpose required him to stand on a set of principles and values. Amira I. Khan tried to instill those principles and values in other men. The modern black athlete is a narcissist. He believes that the more wealth he acquires, the better things will be for black people. Brown believed in sharing with others the values and principles that made him successful. Again, I do not know Jim Brown's faith. However, I do feel confident arguing that it is more biblical to spread good values among men than to pursue financial wealth. The pursuit of money eventually triggers selling out. That's what makes Jim Brown special, a man among boys. Modern American culture celebrates black sellouts. From Jay-Z to LeBron James to Dr. Dre to Al Sharpton to Stephen A. Smith, popular culture loves high-profile black men willing to abandon every common sense principle in service to his bank account. From the matriarchy to transgenderism to same-sex marriage to abortion, there's nothing a black celebrity won't endorse to protect his finances. Long live Jim Brown, a real man, a real hero, no sellout. All right, I love Jim Brown, and he is someone that had a great impact on me and my worldview and the way that I conduct myself as a professional. It's the sacrifices he made reputation-wise, just enormous. Absolutely enormous. He should have been the most celebrated athlete of his time, not just for his greatness, but for just what he backed up with the way that he lived his life. This past weekend, I was on the phone with Rockhead Johnson, longtime friend of mine, a guy that Jim mentored since 1990. Rockhead is for just an honest description, a former Compton Crip, gang member that made his name in prison, huge reputation in Los Angeles. He gets paroled in 1990. He gets involved in Jim's Amira I. Khan program. He ran a summer AAU basketball program for Jim. Rockhead is just well known in Los Angeles. Jim was like a father figure to Rock. And sitting on the phone, crying with Rock on Friday, I just can't pass on or articulate enough the impact Jim and the way he lived his life, the impact he had on other men. Positive impact. Positive impact. Taking street guys like Rock and giving them a purpose in life that went well beyond gangbanging. Jim Brown, just a great man. And I'm well aware of the accusations people use to try to bring down his reputation. I don't engage in it because I wasn't there. I don't know. I know what Jim was convicted of, and they're not the charges that people throw at him. The New York Times ran a story about Jim's death on Friday and tossed in the headline. And Jim was accused of domestic violence. Accused is the right word. And so when Bill Clinton passes away, I can't wait to read the New York Times headline. Next time Brittney Griner's in the news, I can't wait to read the New York Times headline. Jim refused to cooperate with the left. or anybody that he felt like had values that did not benefit him and or men. He just wouldn't get on board with anybody. Jim, as far as I know, Jim wasn't a Republican, he wasn't a Democrat. Jim Brown was Jim Brown. Jim Brown had a purpose in life. He wanted to share his values with as many men, regardless of color, as possible, because he thought those values and principles would make those men successful. He believed in America. If you applied the right values and principles to America, you could be a huge success in this country. That's not a black or a white thing. That's a values and principle thing. Love Jim Brown. Gonna miss Jim Brown. We don't have anybody to replace Jim Brown. All of these athletes, all of these alleged role models and celebrities, all can be bought and paid for. They think that getting money is the solution to every problem. It is not. Not that me or Jim Brown have a problem with getting money, and that's one of the reasons why this show is honored to be partnered with Ramp. What better way to simplify your business finances across expenses, across vendors, payments, and accounting? If so, Ramp could be a complete game changer. Ramp is the corporate card and expense management software designed to help you save time and put money back in your pocket. Ramp gives finance teams unprecedented control and insight into company spend. With Ramp, you're able to issue cards to every employee with limits and restrictions and automate expense reporting so you can stop wasting time at the end of every month. Ramp really saves you money. Businesses that use Ramp save an average of 3.5% the first year. Ramp is easy to use. Get started, issue virtual and physical cards, and start making payments in less than 15 minutes, whether you have 5 employees or 5,000, and now get $250 when you join Ramp. Yes, I'm not joking. That's not a mistake. You join Ramp, they give you $250. Just go to ramp.com/fearless, ramp.com/fearless, ramp.com/fearless. They're going to give you $250 for doing this. I have taken my small little company and put it in the Ramp machine, simplifying my life. This is a journey and a process we can do together. Simplify your business, get the assistance you need. The way corporate America is going, we all need to be our own little business institutions. Ramp can help you do that. It can help create the financial independence, the business independence you need to survive in this very woke world. All right, I want to get back to my discussion of Jim Brown, and we'll do that with the Korean Cosell, Steve Kim. And it's perfect for Steve Kim. Jim Brown was a big fight fan. Jim Brown actually called some huge fights. Am I right, Steve? Didn't Jim Brown call the Rumble in the Jungle?
I believe he was part of that broadcasting team. It's interesting, Jason, on Friday, after we filmed our segment, I think the news broke about an hour and a half later that Jim Brown had passed away. Now, I made my way over to the MGM Grand this past weekend. I was covering the Devin Haney-Vasyl Lomachenko fight, and I happened to be having lunch at the Wolfgang Puck's, and about half a room down was Bob Arum. And Bob was certainly very, very sad. You could just see it in his facial expression and his body language that he had lost a great friend, because without Jim Brown, there is no Bob Arum or Top Rank. I don't know if people know the story, but back as Muhammad Ali was going through his exile and then wanted to get reinstated as a professional prize fighter, Jim Brown was part of that group of advisors that Ali had. And there was this discussion like, who's going to organize the events? We need a promoter. We need a lawyer. We need a guy. And it was Jim who said, I know somebody. He worked in the Kennedy administration. I like him. His name is Robert J. Arum. And at that point, Bob Arum told me years ago, and this surprised me, he had never really been a fight fan, had never gone to a fight until he promoted Ali Chuvalo. Okay, and they went through a lot of red tape with the government to get that fight off. And the top-ranked Twitter feed on Friday basically said that Jim Brown is one of the founders of Top Rank Boxing. So he definitely had a hand, not in just NFL history, but also in boxing history.
Yeah, I remember seeing, and there's beyond the Ali Foreman fight, I just remember Jim calling several major fights. I just think for young people, they don't understand how big of a deal Jim Brown was.
Yeah.
And other than Muhammad Ali and Michael Jordan, I'm not sure if any athlete was that pervasive within sports culture and within American culture as Jim Brown, or at the height of his football career, and then as he started his Hollywood career, Jim Brown was every bit as big a deal as Ali and Michael Jordan, but his interests, and this is where again, his business interests weren't the same as Michael Jordan. He never defined himself on how much money he could make. He had a different purpose. But if he had wanted to go down that road, I think he would have been able to.
Jason, I compare him to Babe Ruth, an athlete that was so dominant. He was probably 2 or 3 generations ahead in terms of his physical dominance, his prowess, his skill, and just the legend of it. I mean, this is a guy from day one of his first game in the National Football League all the way to the end of his 9th year was always probably the best athlete. I mean, just looking at it from a football and athletic standpoint, this guy may have been the all-time greatest lacrosse player at Syracuse. I don't know if people know that. People consider him one of the greatest at that sport, probably a hobby for him. And then when it comes to football, he played 9 years, and really, I think he missed half a game. And what's amazing is, Jason, you talk about his size and his speed. He probably ran about a 4.3, but for that era, he was 6'2", 230, which meant he was as big as most defensive linemen or ends, and he could outrun defensive backs. And if you talk to players in that era, they speak about him with awe, like he was not of this planet Earth. And his career stats, and this is just a football thing, it's kind of trivial to his life. He'll even tell you this. He averaged 5.2 yards a carry. That's amazing. That's like hitting 400 throughout your career, okay, or averaging 50 points every single season in the NBA to do that. I don't think people appreciate how great of an athlete he was. And then you take a look at his career as an actor, he did some stuff that was taboo, like doing nude scenes with women that were not of his skin tone. I mean, that thing was and I think you have to have some guts to do that. And he didn't care. And I just think about the line that you had. You mentioned about his quote about how I'm an American, I'm proud of it, I'm not going to desecrate our flag. The thing that was great about Jim Brown, whether you agreed or disagreed with his philosophies on life, culture, or this country, he was willing to be a renegade when it was not safe. And then he was willing to be a patriotic when it was not popular. And I just could not imagine him just doing a hashtag and thinking, I'm doing something as an activist.
The thing about Jim Brown is, like, if you go back to 1960, if you compare 1960 Jim Brown to 1970, 1980, 1990, 2023 Jim Brown, there's such an incredible consistency. And even people will read my column and hear my mono and think that I'm taking a horrible shot at Muhammad Ali. I'm really just speaking facts. That Muhammad Ali, you compare the 1960 version to the 1985 version, 1990 version, it's 2 different people. One guy's a member of the Nation of Islam running around with Malcolm X. The other guy is lighting the torch at the Atlanta Olympics in 1996 and, you know, is the toast of all of America and has disavowed the Nation of Islam and all that. And you know, when I look at someone like Bill Russell, and anybody that, hear me in context, anybody that knows me knows I have no problem with interracial dating. I always have to enter that into the record. But Bill Russell comes off early in his career as this militant black guy, and then the last 50 years of his life, he just kept marrying younger and younger white women every time. And four of them in succession. And then he's taking a knee like he's Colin Kaepernick, and all of it's out of guilt, I think, over who he married and what he felt like that said about him. So let me play like I'm this rebel and I'm in support of Colin Kaepernick. And then when I look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I mean, I can't stand Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I think he's done such an incredible pivot and such a government spokesman. You know, the guy wouldn't participate in the 1968 Olympics, and now anything the Biden administration or the regime in power tells him to do, he hops on full speed. Jim Brown, incredible consistency. He had a set of principles and values that he stuck to. All these other guys, to me, did what made the most financial sense for them.
Well, I learned something. I didn't know Bill Russell went on more youth movements than Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, so I'll stick that in the file cabinet there. But, you make a point about Muhammad Ali. Yeah, so you make a point about Muhammad Ali, and I'm certainly an admirer of the greatest. But you are right. He went from militant to mainstream. And the figure that he was in the mid-'60s to early 70s was much more palatable to middle America by the mid-'80s. There's no doubt about it. It was a softened version. And then as he lost his ability to communicate as he once did, he became even more safe as a symbol. You know, what I find interesting about Ali, I think the last 5, 6, 7 years of his life, I was very uncomfortable with seeing him publicly being trotted out to events. Did not look the same. It was declining health. And he just didn't look like a human being with a lot of vitality left. He had given so much, and I said to myself, let that man have his privacy. Let us remember him as we once did. And Jim Brown, the last several years, kind of shied away from making as many appearances, that there was this dignity and hardness to him that he kept, and I love that. Jim Brown stayed Jim Brown. And Jason, I've told you this story before, but in the autumn of 2001, I was invited through a group. I was with Bernard Hopkins, who had just won his fight with Felix Trinidad, came out here for the World Boxing Hall of Fame function, and I was invited to go up to Jim's house on a Sunday afternoon. And so he's in his mid-60s at that point. And when we go up to the long winding hills and we go up to his home and we park, it really hadn't hit me that I'm going to meet Jim Brown. And the first time I saw him open up the door and he's greeting everybody, he's wearing a cutoff sweater. So his arms are showing. Jason, let me just tell you, at that age, he's still not the first guy you'd want to pick on in a bar fight. There was a presence about him that was palpable. Like, you just kind of knew. Don't ask him about the silly, trivial stuff like, what do you think about the Browns quarterback situation? As Logan Roy would say, he was a serious person, and he literally went to every single person in our group, shook our hands, and looked us in the eye and said, young man, what's your name? And I'm just telling you, he was a nice guy, but it was still intimidating. I'll never forget it. When he walked through that door, I said, oh, my God, that is still not a guy you want to play with. That's in his mid-60s, Jason.
Yeah, and I went to his house in those years as well, and even in the 70s, he still was a pretty impressive figure, even well into his 70s. He comes from very good genes. Steve, I want to transition a little bit to Colts owner Jim Irsay, in honor of Jim's death, put out a list of his top 5 NFL players of all time, and it's a pretty interesting list. Love that he has Jim Brown number 1, Tom Brady number 2, John Elway, which I absolutely love him having the cojones to put him number 3, and then 4 and 5, Deacon Jones and Reggie White. Missing from that list is Peyton Manning. I think this is really admirable of Robert Irsay, to Jim Irsay, keeping it this honest, keeping it this real.
I wonder, is this a shot at his father? But again, you know what, Jason? I agree. I'll say this right now. First of all, a lot of respect for Jim Irsay for giving the Minister of Defense, or both of them, Deacon Jones and Reggie White, their credit. There is such a rush to just say, when you name the top 10 players, everyone picks like 9 quarterbacks. And I'm like, you know what? There should be a separate list. Everyone else is playing football. These guys are playing quarterback. But ask yourself this, and to anyone that disagrees, all things being equal, which means the players around you, the surface that you're playing at, and the weather. If you had to win one game, would you rather take Peyton Manning or John Elway based on their physical tools and their play? Personally, I think Jim Irsay, I do not disagree with him.
Listen, I've always contended John Elway is the greatest football player of all time, and I do that saying that it's because the quarterback position is so important and so elevated, and that's why I used to put John Elway ahead of Jim Brown. I would have Jim Brown number 2. I've now had to concede, given all of his success and accomplishments, that I grudgingly put Tom Brady at the top. But I don't think Elway gets his just, because in any era, John Elway would be an absolute beast at the quarterback position. Same way I feel about Jim Brown. And look, I love the fact that Irsay's got Reggie White in the top 5. I'm not old enough to know much about Deacon Jones. But Reggie White, I think, belongs, as a former college offensive lineman, Reggie White is the absolute last person I would ever want to attempt to block. Aaron Donald is starting to get in that list as well, but Reggie White was unblockable. Jim Irsay's list is incredible. Do you think, is it a shot? You say it may be a shot at his dad. Is it a shot at Peyton Manning at all?
Maybe it's just being honest. But again, the thing about John Elway, people forget, he ran a low 4.5. I mean, he could actually run. And there are high school highlights of him at Granada Hills High School, literally throwing the ball 75 yards on a dime to guys. And there's this one play at USC where he scrambled around for 15 seconds and threw the ball 70 yards in the air over the head of Ronnie Lott. So when people say that Patrick Mahomes is doing stuff we've never seen, my retort is, then you've never seen John Elway. But Jason, in your top 5, you do not have Jerry Rice. I think Jerry Rice might be my number 1 or 2, because NFL Network actually did a list years ago. They had Jim Brown 2, Jerry Rice number 1.
Is Jerry Rice, let's say, if I had to do a top 5 right now, Jim Brown, and again, this is in no particular order, these guys would be in my top 5. Jim Brown, John Elway, Tom Brady, Reggie White, and then there's a fight for number 5. And I get Jerry Rice or maybe Deion Sanders would be my other candidates, I guess.
I just, look, and I hated Jerry Rice as a diehard Ram fan growing up. That guy ruined my childhood in his battles with Jerry Gray and Leroy Irvin. But in my view, Jerry Rice, for about a 12-year stretch, played his position of football as well as anyone. Maybe Larry Allen at guard, maybe John Hanna. Certainly some of the stuff that Ray Lewis and Dion did. But Jerry Rice's longevity and his consistency. And I think Michael Irvin once said it best. They asked him, "Are you as good as Jerry Rice?" And Mike, let me just make this very clear. I'm good. That man over there is Jesus in cleats. So when you're called Jesus in cleats, you're pretty good.
Very good. Hey, I want to move on to tonight's NBA game. The Lakers down 0-3. LeBron James is in a little bit of trouble here. He's in a little bit of trouble.
Little bit, huh?
If he gets swept, does it have any impact on his legacy?
No, wait a minute. Weren't they a 7th seed? If a 7th seed gets to the Western Conference Finals, come on. You're judging off of a very, very
let me blow that up. I'm not gonna let you die. I'm not gonna let you dodge with that. If that was the same team, if that was the same team that started the season, I'd call them a 7 seed. That's a transfer portal team that was rebuilt at the trade deadline, and And they come off beating the Warriors where everybody, oh, look, Rob Pelinka did all this magic. That's not a true 7 seed. That's a totally revamped roster and team at the trade deadline.
Okay, all right, yes. And I'll tell you why. Because if you look at the overall scope of his run as a Laker, you take away the bubble, and it's burst. It's been a bust. It has been a bust. And Jason, we were wrong. We thought on Friday the fixers would come, and there was no way Denver would win Game 3. Now, I'm ringside, or I'm on press row at the MGM Grand, kind of getting some updates on the game during the undercard. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, LeBron's going to make a run here. They're going to pull away, and the referee's going to make sure that Denver cannot go up 3-0. Then all of a sudden, I look at the score, and I'm like, gee, the Lakers cannot stop the Nuggets. When the Nuggets go up-tempo, and what is really scary for them is Jokic probably played the worst game of his life or this season for 3 quarters, and they still really could not keep up with them at the end. And I've seen this happen before. When a home team who is down 2-0 loses Game 3 in a relatively hard-fought battle, we've seen it, Jason. They just say, okay, you know what Nick Van Exel once said? Everyone on 3. 1, 2, 3. Cancun. The Lakers might be making their plans to Cancun right now. I've seen this before. And by the way, but when you look at Laker sweeps, people forget Shaq and Kobe were swept throughout their Laker run. Okay, in the late 90s. I still remember the Forum, our last game as Lakers fans at the Forum. The Suns swept us, or the Spurs. The Spurs swept us in 99. So it's not unusual, but I do get the sense it's inevitable this will be a sweep.
Yeah, I don't think it will say much about LeBron's legacy. I'm going to be fair. He's not on Jordan's level. There's nothing he can do about it. There's nothing he can do about it. And so this will have no impact. It doesn't diminish LeBron. LeBron diminished himself from team hopping to team hopping. That's what diminished him. And, anyway, this has no impact. However, I will say this. I don't think they're getting swept tonight. I don't think the Celtics are going to get swept. And I think if they got to bring Tim Donaghy out of retirement to get this game right tonight, they're going to do it. And the reason why is they can't have both of these series end in sweeps and there be 8 days between the last game and the NBA Finals, and everybody said, I'm going to have to wait 8 days for the Heat and the Denver Nuggets. No, thank you. These series will go to Game 5 and perhaps Game 6.
So, Jason, not only do you have to let Tim Donaghy referee, you got to let him put a 2-team parlay on the Lakers and the Celtics. We cannot. But by the way, I actually wouldn't mind a double sweep. So now we can all go back to not watching NBA basketball for a week. I'm actually watching more. By the way, I want to make this clear to our audience. I literally did not watch a single regular season game. I've watched some of the playoffs at the behest of Fearless and Jason Whitlock because I'm a team player. If I didn't do this show, this fine pro, I'd watch none of it. So I don't want to hear in the comments, well, Steve Kim really secretly watches. No, I don't. No, I don't.
Look, what I'm most interested in is watching LeBron lose. So I watch the Lakers games.
Yeah.
And I watch about half of the Heat-Celtics game just so that I'm up to speed on it. I don't know what will happen in this NBA Finals deal if it's the Heat and the Nuggets. I don't know what percentage of it I'll watch. I guess I'll be interested in Jimmy Butler and Jokic.
Jason, come on. You know this play here. If Denver should close this out and they make the finals, me and you, and for the good of the Fearless show and our nation and our audience, we must all now become Jokic fans to see him win the NBA title. We're going to have some fun with some NBA analysts. Kendrick Perkins, look out. Look out, Kendrick. We're coming right after you, old KP. So come on, that's the interest in it right there.
There is some interest. And look, I'll probably watch, and this will get to the final time, I'll probably watch just so I don't get inundated with all the Brittney Griner hype that ESPN and everybody's doing.
I mean,
they are trying to stuff this woman down all of our throats every day. Brittney Griner farted and it smelled like collard greens. Some kind of headline about Brittney Griner every day. Brittney Griner emotional after home game return. It's no one cares. They care so little. This overhyped first game of her return from Russian prison or whatever, half of Crypto Arena was empty, and her coach complained about it. Let's watch Vanessa Nineguard, or who, I don't know what team she
Careful how you
she
say that.
coaches Phoenix.
Careful how you say that name. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, let's watch the clip.
I mean, it was great, but like honestly, come on, LA. Like we didn't sell out the arena for BG. Like I expected more, to be honest, right? Like it was great, it was loud, but how was it not a sellout? How was it not a sellout?
Okay.
Steve, can you explain? You live in LA. How was it not a sellout?
First of all, if they only sold out half the arena, that's twice as many people as I anticipated. So let's have a little gratitude. And by the way, LA has entertainment options. But Miss Nygaard, want to be careful there with that pronunciation. I have 4 reasons why that didn't sell out. I'm going to list them very slowly. It's W, N, B, A. That's why. Right there. That's it, Jason. It's pretty simple.
It is simple, but I can't. The way they're trying to stuff this down our throats, like people are interested. ESPN has this alternate universe that people are on the edge of what's going on with Brittney Griner? What's going on with Brittney Griner? They could be promoting more talented players, more marketable players. Nobody wants to see this 6'8", tatted up, whatever, woman, whatever. Nobody wants to see that.
William Roden does. He probably wants to be embedded onto that team, covered game to game, right? Here's the thing, Jason, that I don't understand about all these people virtue signaling about how we should all be supporting it and why aren't we at the game. I want to check all their social media. Well, I really don't. So get one of your interns to do it. But check all these people's social media that is wagging the finger like I am right now and see how many pictures they have at WNBA games. No, I'm being dead serious. So all these people lecturing us on how we need to support this league, that we should be there. Let's check their Instagram and their Twitter. Back, let's go old school. Let's check their MySpace and see how many pictures they take from Mercury and Sparks games. Give me a break.
Well, Kamala Harris was there.
Oh my God. Okay.
Darvin Ham was at one of the games. I just move on or find someone. Yeah. Please, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, anybody get to the WNBA as soon as possible so they can quit marketing.
Wow.
I would take that over Brittney Griner. At least she's not covered in tattoos.
Yet.
I mean, my God.
Yet.
Yeah, I hope she doesn't. I hope someone is smart enough to. But Brittney Griner is unwatchable, plays an unexciting style of basketball. Surely to God they got better players to push and tell us to watch than some 6'8" person covered in tattoos. I can get that in the NBA from real athletes. What do I need to see it in the WNBA for? Anyway. Thank you, Steve. Great job as always. Hey, you guys, slam that like button. Give me the 5-star review if you're listening over Apple. Shemeka Michelle, next.
It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
All right, welcome back. Time to play a little Make It Make Sense with Shemeka Michelle. Shemeka, I have 3 stories I need you to make sense of for me, or maybe we can make it make sense for each other. We'll start with the NAACP has issued a travel advisory for the state of Florida. I will read from the NAACP website. Today, the NAACP Board of Directors issued a formal travel advisory for the state of Florida. The travel advisory comes in direct response to Governor Ron DeSantis' aggressive attempts to erase Black history and to restrict diversity, equity, and inclusion programs in Florida schools. The former travel notice states, Florida is openly hostile towards African Americans, people of color, and the LGBTQ plus individuals. Before traveling to Florida, please understand that the state of Florida devalues and marginalizes the contributions of and the challenges faced by African Americans and other communities of color. Then they quote NAACP President and CEO Derek Johnson saying, "Let me be clear. Failing to teach an accurate representation of the horrors and inequalities that Black Americans have faced and continue to face is a disservice to the students and a dereliction of duty to all, blah, blah, blah." So if you don't teach about the horrors and inequalities, if you don't tell Black people they're victims, we shouldn't travel to the state of Florida, according to the NAACP. Please help it make sense. And I've been all over the NAACP website looking for the travel advisory for O Block in Chicago, south side of Chicago, west. No travel advisories there. You're free to move about O Block as you see fit. But Florida is a no-go zone. Make it make sense.
Right. The NAACP that was started by Jews, the same NAACP that allowed a white woman to pretend like she was Black for years, they now have this advisory. I would not trust anything that the NAACP has to say. And if I was a Black person in Florida, I would actually be happy about this, because keep your ratchet, I don't know how to behave, I'm not going to say the N-word-ish behind at home. Don't even come to our state, because everything you touch, it just turns to trash. So I think it's silly that Black people would even fall for this. I think it was the Shade Room that actually posted it, and I was reading some of the comments. Black people saying, oh yeah, DeSantis is trying to take us back to slavery, and really jumping on the bandwagon that they actually believe what this is saying. All you have to do is do a little research. And Ron DeSantis came out himself to say African American studies is different from African American history. He explained that they're putting queer studies in there and that they're really trying to indoctrinate your children. Yet Black people love to have something else ride in on the civil rights movement. It's crazy to me that we even want to wrap ourselves up in everybody else's agenda. Why do we have to equate being Black with being gay? Gay is not the new Black, but yet, according to Black people, we should just open our arms and accept anything that's less than. This is what we do. We like mediocrity, but we're the same people that hashtag Black excellence. It's silly to me that people are buying into this, because it's stupid.
It is, and it's such an intentional strategy, because literally, before I went to the website, just when I heard the story, I was like, oh, they're going to wrap the LGBTQ, the alphabet mafia, into this. And first words out of their mouth is about, the LGBTQ, wrapping them together with us. And first of all of this is silly and stupid, because they've reduced Black history to, whatever terrible happened to us, that's important. We must learn about all the terrible things. And it's as if they believe we have no contributions to brag about. That's what history normally teaches. It actually teaches the positive. Here's what you did. Here's what you accomplished. Here's the obstacles you overcame. This is what makes you great. They're stressing, the NAACP And all these leftist organizations are stressing, no, what we need to teach you is what happened to you and why you're a victim, because they want you to adopt that victim's mentality, and they want you to, not just mentality, identity. And that's why so many of us run around looking to be able to tell oh man, I'll never forget when in 4th grade, a little Johnny called me the N-word, and that really changed my whole life around. And I'm just like, how? How? Some little white boy or even a grown person said something mean and disrespectful to you, and that changed you're really that weak? You weren't going to make it in this world regardless because you're just that weak. If that's all it takes, because trust me, for every white person that calls you a name, there are going to be 500 black folks that call you a name or something worse, or call you the N-word at the drop of a hat. And so if that's all it takes to knock you off, you got no shot in this world anyway. The NAACP, I'm starting to think from its inception, never was about the advancement of color people. It was always been an organization about using black people to advance an agenda that serves everyone else. And to me, when you said it off top, and we'll get in trouble for it, but it was founded by Jewish people, and it seems to be an organization that wanted black people to participate in the promotion of victimhood as a tool to gain power. And they needed a cosigner, and they got black people to cosign for it.
Yeah, definitely. And what we're doing is teaching kids that have everything at the tip of their fingers, that they're so oppressed. And I say it all the time. There's no way I should feel like I have the same struggles as my grandparents. There's no way my children should feel like they have the same struggles as their great grandparents. We were walking in the neighborhood this morning, and as we turned the corner, one of the neighbors let their dogs outside, but they were in the gate. And so my daughter said, oh, they let the dogs out because we're black. And we just all fell out laughing because it was just so funny to us. And we all said, this is exactly what black people would think. And they would go live, oh, we were walking in the neighborhood and they don't think we should be in this neighborhood. So they let the dogs out and it's so racist. And they couldn't even see us when they let their dogs out. But I was just so glad that my daughter said that and found it funny, because it lets me know that I'm not teaching my children this type of oppressive mindset that so many are running with nowadays. Everything is a microaggression. Everything is racist. Every time you turn around, these so-called people that believe in black excellence are looking to see what the white man does. But they'll call us, white supremacists in blackface, but they are the ones that actually believe in white supremacy. If you think that you have to get up every day and worry about what the white man is doing or what the white man thinks about you, you're the one who actually think he's supreme. White people get up every day and do not think, oh, how can I keep a black man down? But there's so many black people that are going out day to day teaching this mindset to kids that you're oppressed and the color of your skin is going to hold you back because no one wants you to get ahead. So no matter what you do in life, no matter how well you do it, you're black and it's just too bad.
Shemeka, I want to move on to number 2. Al Sharpton over the weekend delivered a eulogy for Jordan Neely, the new George Floyd. I'm reading a New York Times article where they picture Jordan Neely from 12 years ago dressed up as Michael Jackson, a Michael Jackson impersonator. I want to read you an excerpt from the story. Jordan Neely spent the last few weeks of his life riding the subways of New York, hungry, desperate, and alone. But at his funeral on Friday at Mount Noba Baptist Church in Harlem, hundreds gathered to mourn him, including friends, family members, prominent Democratic politicians, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, who delivered his eulogy in a public outpouring of grief for a man who spent his final days in solitude and anonymity. And so what's not mentioned here, and this is the same church where 16 years ago, when Jordan Neely was 14, hosted his mother's funeral, who was murdered by Jordan Neely's stepfather, her husband. But the thing that strikes me is that Al Sharpton's primary job, brand building thing seems to be running around the country and providing eulogies for people he did not know who just happened to be killed or involved in violent encounters with white people. That's your job as a man. That's how you build your brand. You crisscross the country doing eulogies for people you do not know. That seems like a really, really bad job, and it's the definition of a grift. I mean, the word grifting gets tossed around a lot. Al Sharpton must be pictured in the dictionary next to the word grift. If the word grift is in the dictionary, I just couldn't think of a worse job than, hey, I go do eulogies for people I don't know.
Yeah, Reverend Bobblehead, because that's exactly what he looks like now. And it's silly to me because the word eulogy in its definition is to talk highly or favorably about someone. And how can you do that unless you actually know them? And so, yes, Reverend Al is, again, one of these people that believe in white supremacy because he believes in Black inferiority. It's amazing to me that a Black life only matters if it was taken by a white person. So you have all of these countless Black people that are killed in cities across America every day by other Black people that don't get this type of notoriety, that don't get this type of concern. You have mothers who are burying their kids every day that don't even get a call, don't even get people saying, hey, let's figure out who killed your child, because it's a lie that, oh, we are more concerned because Black people go to jail. I know a lot of Black unsolved murders right here in my city. So that's the lie that we perpetuate, that, oh, we're concerned when it's a white person because we have to fight for justice. Fight for justice for a lot of these Black mothers who are still waiting for somebody to be held accountable for their children's death. And so, yes, it's definitely a grift when Al is going out, but he is the exact type of person that Booker T. Washington talked about when he said there's a certain group of people that don't want to see the Negro race advance because they get money off of this oppression. They get money off of this race division that they push on a daily basis. Reverend Al Sharpton is just as fake and phony as his comp, that relaxer that he's been wearing for all of these years. And it's time for people to start calling him out. Ben Crump is trying to take his place. This is exactly what they do, but they have no concern about the lives that are lost on a daily basis in Black communities across the country.
Let's watch an excerpt from Al Sharpton's eulogy of Jordan Neely.
We should not celebrate Jordan's life, but we should not ignore how he died. This funeral was not on the schedule. We're not here because of natural causes. We're here because of unnatural policies. Jordan was not annoying someone on the train. Jordan was screaming for help. We keep criminalizing people with mental illness. People keep criminalizing people that need help. They don't need abuse, they need help. What happened to Jordan was a crime. And this family shouldn't have to stand by themselves. I heard the governor of Florida, DeSantis, say that the man that killed Jordan was a good Samaritan. A good Samaritan helped those in trouble. They don't choke them out.
Not one mention, again, he says at the beginning about let's don't ignore how he died. That's giving him the excuse, or I don't know anything about his life. Mostly, particularly the last 12 years of his life, he was homeless on the street, arrested 40 some odd times, tried to kidnap someone, tried to harm a 7-year-old, harmed a grandparent. Again, none of that's worthy of talking about. So the only reason why he's there is to talk about what happened. Again, no different than George Floyd. The last 8-9 minutes of George Floyd's life made him a hero and someone worthy of a statue. And the last 10 minutes of Jordan Neely's life, and it erases anything he did before that. It's shameful what Al Sharpton is doing here, and it's I don't know. One final shot at making it make any sense, because it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, he said this wasn't of natural causes, but I would say that it is, because if you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I told this story on Twitter a couple of weeks ago, and some people were upset with me. I can remember my uncle, who was addicted to drugs, who was always in trouble, always just not doing the right thing. When he was murdered, I remember all of the fanfare around telling my grandmother. They made sure that they didn't tell her until the pastor got to the house. They made sure she was sitting down. And when they told her, those were her exact words. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. I never saw her drop a tear, and it seemed so cold to me at the time, but that's exactly how I feel. If he had harmed my grandmother, as we've heard that he attacked, I guess, a woman in her 60s or whatever, I would feel like he got what was coming to him. And so this idea that this was just a Michael Jackson impersonator and, oh, he was just, hungry and begging for food. The man stood on the subway, according to witnesses, and said, I'm hungry. I'm willing to die. I'm willing to go back to jail. Somebody like myself would have felt threatened, and I would have felt like I needed to shoot the shit out of him. And that's just me being honest, Jason. So these people that are actually acting as if this was just some sweet, innocent kid that was, begging for food that day, we're not being honest about it. And this is what we do. We love to push mediocrity in the Black community, and we like to make excuses for his. If we were so concerned, the man has been homeless, like you said, for 12 years. Why hadn't somebody seen any of these other things that he did and tried to get him some help? Took him in, tried to put him in a facility so that he wouldn't be somewhere on a train demanding food and demanding help. So all of this, I want to help. We should care. We should cry. We should protest. BS. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. And next, what you having for dinner today?
Finally, Shemeka, there's been a story all last week that we didn't get a chance to talk about. A nurse in New York City who got in a little dust-up, a little dispute about a city bike, one of those bikes you can rent and ride, and she got trashed all over the media because it looked like 5 black boys surrounded her and, kind of bullied her off the bike. And Tariq Nasheed and Ben Crump, and everybody jumps on, look at this white Karen bullying this young black boy and blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, eventually the white woman pulls out the receipts that it was her bike, that she had rented it, she had a receipt for it, and the kids seemed to be bullying her. None of it ever made any sense to me from the get-go, just because I just couldn't imagine being in an argument with a woman over a rented bike. I've been trained to defer to women. They go through the door before I do. You provide them every courtesy. Oh, they need help getting across the street. They need help getting their groceries in, carried to their front door. Everything is about deferring to women. That's just the way that I was raised. And so when I heard the story just on the surface, I was like, they really, a young kid, they're arguing with a nurse? And particularly when it comes to like a nurse, that's the ultimate job of service. When I see someone in a nurse's outfit, I think, oh man, they got a big heart. They're cleaning up people's poop. They're all kinds of just things I don't have the patience for. Most people don't have the patience for. They're dealing with the sick and the ill and providing them care. When I see someone in a nurse's uniform, I think that's a great human being. What can I do to help them? These kids are arguing with them. Let's watch the clip, and then I need you to make it make sense for me.
No, record him.
Help! Help me! Please help me!
It's not your bike.
Please help me!
It's not your bike. It's not your bike.
Please help me! Help! Please get off me!
Wait, what the f*** going on, bro?
Please get off me!
Yo, don't let him take it, bro. Now you're not getting the bike, bro.
Yeah, now you're not getting the bike, bro.
Help!
You're not getting the
Get off
bike.
me,
I'm
dude.
not. Bro,
Why you took his phone? What's wrong with you?
You're not
Don't touch
touching
his
my
phone.
phone.
Do not touch his phone.
I'm not touching you. You putting your stomach on my hand.
My dude, stop. No, my dude, stop. No. I said no. I said sit down.
Please help!
She's just crying.
You're not crying. I got
Stupid.
I got
It's
your
my
video.
bike. You drunk?
Wait, you pulled it out? Hey, Hassan, you pulled it out? Hassan, you pulled it out?
This is my bike. It's on my account. Please move.
All right, so why don't we reset the bike?
I'm not resetting the bike.
It's his.
Reset it, and I'm gonna pull it out on your account.
You are active.
This is my
Stop
bike.
fake crying. Just fake crying. Stop fake crying.
Hey, stop touching me. I don't touch you.
Hold up.
Hey, stop touching me. Stop touching me.
Why don't you take this bike?
Stop touching me.
I will.
Exactly. So take it.
Fuck out of here.
So take it.
You're stupid ass. Fuck out of here. Dumbass. Your baby gonna come out retarded.
Wait. How you stop crying? Not a tear came down, miss. Not a tear came down.
The cursing, none of it. I just don't. Now, you can't tell, but the woman is pregnant as well. But it just doesn't make sense to me. Help!
You gotta cry along with that. It didn't make sense to me when I first saw it because, she did appear to be a Karen initially when I saw the video, but I was thinking to myself, you have to be nuts in this climate to even think that you could argue with a group of Black boys. I don't even know if I would do that unless I had my book bag, because I think I would have just said, here, take the bike, I don't know, and then tried to prove it later. I don't know. But to me, to think that she was just taking the bike from them, I didn't really think that, because it just wouldn't be, she would have to be nuts. It wouldn't be a safe thing to do. So I felt from the beginning, there has to be some type of validity to what she's saying, or either some genuine confusion, because I just could not see a woman in her right mind walking up to a group of Black males and thinking, I'm just going to be a Karen and take this bike from them. I never thought that was actually the story. And so I was waiting for more information to come out, because you would just have to be silly to do that. And I felt like she had to have some reason to believe that was her bike. And now we're seeing, I guess, receipts, but we're also seeing the fact that people that push that story of this is a Karen, this is racist, this is a white supremacist, they have not come back to recant their stories. I think Ben Crump did delete his tweet maybe, but it was after millions of people had already seen it, and nobody is actually issuing an apology or saying, oops, I made a mistake.
Well, here's one of the issues. If she had rented that bike and it was on her credit card and she allowed those boys to take off with it, however long they kept it, she's getting charged for it.
Right.
So that's why she wasn't letting go of the bike. And she's smart enough to know she can't really win in this situation the way the political dynamics are in this country.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that just kept running through my mind was, what would I do if I saw this myself in real time? 5 black boys, white woman, I would like to think I would step in and try to mediate the situation and settle it. But in this climate, it's like, hey, things could really escalate here. And, I don't know what these guys are. The only time I was much younger and I was much more foolish, but if you remember in the days back when Southwest Airlines didn't have the boarding groups and the numbering system, and you just had to stand in line, you'd get to your flight 90 minutes beforehand and just start standing in line, and that it was whoever stood in line first. I remember I was coming back from Vegas, and I think it was NBA All-Star weekend in Las Vegas. May have been that weekend. I can't remember. I was coming back from Vegas, and this was back before they had the boarding lines, and these 2 young black men showed up at the airport and set their bags in line, and then they went off and slept, 100 feet from where they set their bags. They sat down and slept, and then when it got time to board their flight, there had been a bunch of us that had been standing in line for an hour. And these 2 dudes walked up to the front of the line where their bags were when it came time to board the flight, and they stood right in front of this elderly white couple that had been standing there for more than an hour. And this elderly white couple was standing right in front of me. And I was like, no, y'all not doing that. No dice. Because the white folks complained a little bit, and then I came in and put my foot down, and we were all flying back to Kansas City. I didn't know these dudes. I didn't know, who, but I remember standing my ground and having to get a little salty with the dudes. They backed down, got behind me, cut in front of some other folks, but got behind me and this elderly white couple. But I'm like, that was the younger, dumber me. At this age, I don't know what I would do, because it's just like, I don't want the conflict, I don't want the trouble. They're just putting and look at the problems Daniel Penny has. I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Yeah, you would
and
definitely.
As another woman, what would you do if you walked past a situation like that?
Just being honest, Jason, I probably would. I don't know if I would do anything. I would try to engage the young boys in some type of conversation, feeling like maybe with Black skin, I could be a mediator in that situation.
Yeah.
However, if they weren't willing to listen or was trying to be aggressive, I can honestly tell you, I'm not losing my life over Karen. I got 3 kids. So, but I think I would try to at least engage them in conversation to see what their stance is, and maybe to help them see the bigger picture, especially to say, boys, are you sure this is your bike? Because if criminal charges come down, you don't want to be on the wrong side of that. So I do think initially I would try to say, something to them, but it would really depend on their response in what I would do next, because she would have been on her own if they were actually trying to be evil.
Wow. Well, thank you, Shemeka. Great
Thank
job. I don't know if we made sense of any of it, but we tried. We'll play some tomorrow. That always makes sense. We'll see you tomorrow.
Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, no deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I just wanna be. I just wanna be. I just wanna be. I just